Yo, 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 a massive hello to all our listeners out there. You've just walked into the Fluency Lab, the only place where we experiment with English until it sticks like a good habit. I'm Leo, and I'm currently trying to replace my late-night cookie habit with a late-night grammar habit. It's not going well, yet.
One step at a time, Leo. Hi, everyone. I'm Emma. It's a pleasure to have you back in the lab. Today, we are diving deep into the human brain to discuss something that shapes our entire lives, the psychology of habit.
This is so important because, as they say, we are what we repeatedly do. If you want to master English, you don't need a miracle. You need a habit.
Exactly. And today, we're going to look at the 3 pillars of habit formation: triggers, routines, and rewards. We're going to break down the science, the myths, and, of course, the vocabulary.
But before we get to the modern gurus like James Clear or Charles Duhigg, we have to look back. Habits aren't a new discovery. I was reading up on this, and it turns out the godfather of American psychology, William James, was writing about this way back in 1890.
Oh, absolutely. In his famous book, The Principles of Psychology, James described habit as the enormous flywheel of society. I love that image. A flywheel is this heavy mechanical wheel used in engines to keep them running smoothly and consistently.
That is such a vivid mechanical metaphor. So he's saying habits are what keep civilization from just falling apart. Like if we had to consciously think about every single thing we did, tying our shoes, opening a door, saying hello, we'd never get anything done.
Precisely. It's about cognitive energy. And this actually leads us directly into the neuroscience of it. Leo, have you ever heard of the basal ganglia?
Basal ganglia. Sounds like an Italian pasta dish. I'll have the basal ganglia with extra cheese, please.
Not quite. It's a golf ball-sized lump of tissue deep in the center of your brain, and it is the headquarters of habit. Here is the technical breakdown. When you first learn something new, like learning to drive a car or learning a new English phrasal verb, your prefrontal cortex is very active. That's the part of the brain right behind your forehead. It's the CEO. It handles decision-making and focus.
Right. The prefrontal cortex is the part of me that is currently sweating while trying to understand the difference between present perfect and past simple. It takes effort.
Exactly. It burns a lot of energy, but the brain is lazy, or let's be polite and say efficient. It wants to save energy. So as you repeat an action over and over, the activity shifts from the high-energy prefrontal cortex to the low-energy basal ganglia.
So the basal ganglia is like the autopilot. Once the data is entered, the pilot can take a nap.
Spot on. That is literally what a habit is biologically. The brain shifting control to a primitive structure so the conscious mind can focus on other things. That's why you can drive home from work and not remember a single turn you made. Your basal ganglia drove the car.
That is slightly terrifying, but also amazing. Okay, Emma, let's start at the beginning of how we program this autopilot. In books like Atomic Habits, they talk about the trigger or the cue. What does that mean in plain English?
A trigger is a stimulus that tells your brain to go into automatic mode. It's the spark that starts the habit. It could be a time of day, a location, an emotional state, or even another person.
So if I see my running shoes by the door and immediately want to go for a jog, the shoes are the trigger?
Spot on. In English, we often use the verb to trigger to describe how one thing causes another. For example, seeing the notification on my phone triggered my urge to check social media.
And that phone notification is probably the most powerful trigger in the modern world. But there is a nuance here, right? It's not just seeing the phone, it's what the phone represents. James Clear talks about the craving as the second step.
Yes, and this is where it gets interesting chemically. The trigger, the ding sound, isn't enough. You need the craving. This is driven by dopamine. We used to think dopamine was about pleasure, but recent neuroscience shows it's actually about desire and anticipation.
So when my phone goes ding, my brain releases dopamine before I even check the message?
Correct. It's the anticipation of the reward that drives the action. If you didn't have that spike of curiosity or desire, that craving, you'd hear the ding and just ignore it.
Okay, so we have the trigger and the craving. Next up is the routine. This is the actual behavior, right?
Right, the routine is the action you take. This is the part we usually want to change or improve. The interesting thing is that when a habit becomes a habit, we do it subconsciously without thinking.
I've heard the term habit stacking. What's that all about? Is that about routines?
Oh, that's a Fluency Lab favorite. Habit stacking is when you anchor a new habit to an old habit. The formula is after I current habit, I will new habit. For example, after I pour my morning coffee, which is my old habit, I will study 5 new words, my new habit.
That makes so much sense because the neural pathway for the coffee is already a superhighway in your brain. You're just building a little on-ramp for the vocabulary.
Exactly. You are piggybacking on the strength of the existing neural connection. It removes the decision fatigue. You don't have to decide when to study, the coffee decides for you.
And finally, the best part of the loop, the reward.
The reward is the reason your brain decided to remember the habit in the first place. It's the feeling of satisfaction or the actual hit of dopamine you get after the routine.
So if I study for an hour and then treat myself to a delicious episode of my favorite show, the show is the reward?
Exactly. Your brain thinks, hey, that felt good. Let's do that again tomorrow. This creates the habit loop. But Leo, I have a question for you. How long do you think it takes to form a new habit like that?
Oh, I know this one. It's 21 days. Everyone says it. If I can just suffer through 21 days of not eating cookies, I'm free, right?
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that is actually a massive myth. It is one of the most famous misconceptions in psychology.
Wait, really? I feel like I've seen 21-day challenges all over Instagram. Where did that number come from?
It comes from a plastic surgeon named Dr. Maxwell Maltz. In 1960, he wrote a book called Psycho-Cybernetics. He noticed that after he performed a nose job or an amputation, it took his patients a minimum of about 21 days to get used to their new face. He said a minimum of about 21 days.
Ah, I see what happened. The internet, or I guess the 1960s version of the internet, played a game of telephone and dropped the word minimum.
Exactly. Self-help gurus loved it because 21 days sounds quick and easy, but the real science paints a different picture. There was a study done at University College London by Philippa Lally in 2009. She tracked 96 people trying to form new habits.
And what was the real number?
On average, 66 days, and for some people it took up to 254 days. It depends on how difficult the habit is. Drinking a glass of water is faster to automate than doing 50 push-ups.
Wow, 66 days. That is significantly longer than 3 weeks. That's more like 2 months. That explains why so many New Year's resolutions fail by February 1st. We quit right when the going gets tough, thinking we should be fixed by now.
But here is the encouraging part of Lally's study. Missing one day did not destroy the habit. A lot of people have this all-or-nothing mentality. Oh, I ate a cookie on Tuesday, I failed, might as well eat the whole box. The data shows that consistency over time matters more than perfection on any single day.
That is a huge relief. Progress, not perfection. Now, speaking of my cookie struggle, what if we want to break a bad habit? Because building good ones is hard, but stopping bad ones feels impossible.
The trick isn't to use willpower. Willpower is a limited resource. It's like a battery that drains throughout the day. By 10 p.m., your battery is empty. The trick is to identify the trigger and hack the environment. Are you eating the cookie because you're hungry or because you're bored or because it's 10 p.m.?
It's definitely boredom and maybe a little bit of stress relief.
When you need to keep the trigger, let's say it's sitting on the couch at 10 p.m., and you need to keep the reward, which is stress relief, but you need to swap the routine. When the boredom trigger hits, try drinking a glass of sparkling water or doing a 2-minute stretch instead.
So I'm hacking the loop. Same cue, same reward, different action. James Clear also talks about identity-based habits. I found this fascinating. Instead of saying I want to quit cookies, I should say I am a healthy eater.
Yes, this is the deepest layer of behavior change. Most people focus on the outcome, I want to lose 10 pounds. But if you focus on identity, I am an athlete, then the decision becomes easier. You ask yourself, what would an athlete do in this situation? An athlete probably wouldn't eat the whole box of cookies.
It's like casting a vote, right? Every time I choose an apple over a cookie, I cast a vote for the identity of healthy Leo.
Exactly. And eventually, you have enough votes to win the election in your brain. You start believing the new identity. And once you believe, I am a person who speaks good English, studying doesn't feel like a chore. It feels like just being yourself.
I love that. It takes the pressure off. Let's look at some power words for this topic before we wrap up. We've used a few good ones already.
Let's highlight consistency. That really is the key. Doing it every day, even poorly, is better than doing it perfectly once a month.
And the idiom to kick a habit. This means to stop doing something bad. I finally kicked the habit of biting my nails. I think that comes from the physical muscle spasms people get when withdrawing from drugs, kicking, but now we use it for anything.
A lighter one is a creature of habit. This is someone who likes doing the same things every day. I'm a total creature of habit. I have the same breakfast every morning.
And don't forget to go cold turkey. That means stopping a habit abruptly and completely rather than slowly reducing it. He quit smoking cold turkey.
And finally, to fall off the wagon. That means you failed to keep your habit for a day or two. But remember, Leo, based on the UCL study, if you fall off the wagon, you can always climb back on.
Absolutely. Let's wrap this up before my 11 a.m. snack trigger kicks in. To recap, the trigger is the spark, the routine is the action, the reward is the feeling. And don't believe the 21-day myth. Give yourself at least 2 months.
Your homework this week. Try habit stacking for your English practice. What is one thing you do every day that you can stack a 5-minute English session onto?
Tell us in the comments, what is one habit you really want to kick this year? We're here to support you.
Well, our podcast habit for today is complete.
And it felt like a great reward. Thanks for joining us in the Fluency Lab. It's always a blast to explore the mind with you all.
Keep building those small wins, keep practicing, and stay curious.
Catch you on the flip side. Stay fluent, stay consistent. Peace.
Toodles!
Bye-bye.